Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Andy, how are you, my good friend?
Very good, thank you. Very good, yeah.
We are, what are we now? It's the beginning, oh my God, it's the beginning of December. Crikey. In fact, I know that because we just gave out all of our competition stuff yesterday. Beginning of December, wow, that has gone really, really fast. We're now racing into the Fire and Excellence Emergency Awards, or the Fire and Emergency Awards, sorry, in Excellence, 2022. Feels like 3 months probably since we were there a year ago with Sabrina and yourself and the team. How have you been?
Yeah, great. It feels like a never-ending conveyor belt of handshakes and smiles and photos and all the rest of it, and handing out awards to happy recipients. But that's what life should be about.
Is the there's a whole new bunch of awards this year, isn't there? Because I don't know, because some of the obvious ones are the similar categories to what we were looking at last year. But are there a couple
I
of new
think
awards
you
this
just
year?
weren't paying attention last time, Pete. They're pretty much the same. It's probably just others have grabbed your attention.
I think that's probably what it is.
I think, yeah, and it might be age, but we shouldn't be ageist.
Most definitely.
I think the entries, I would say, keep getting better. I think that's unfair on past winners. I think the high standard keeps on going, and maybe we're just widening the gate and getting more entries from more diverse fields, which is great.
I think there's probably a little bit of that in there, yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a combination because, let's deal with the issue. Should you have awards in difficult times? I think they're more essential than ever that you're recognising the work of staff under incredible pressure and conditions that we're living through at the moment, with wars and cost of living crisis and austerity and threat of industrial action. The list goes on. But actually, people that are doing remarkable things under duress should be recognised. And by and large, they're unsung. I mean, most of the people that we feature aren't recognised more broadly in the UK Fire and Rescue Service. We have a few celebs there, as you must, for the glitterati sort of aspect. But it's the unsung heroes. We've got a dog this time, for goodness sake. It's about time, long overdue. We've got Rex, the fire and investigation dog. From Hertfordshire. So it's been long overdue that dogs are given equal recognition to the rest of us. You've gone silent, Pete. What's happened?
No. I'm just looking at the awards as you're speaking through there, because I had seen Rex, but is it spelled REQS? Is that why? Or
yes.
Am I about? Oh, I was going to say, am I about to highlight to you a spelling error that you've put on your award sheet?
No, please don't. The unsung, yes, is going in. I think he is going in the Unsung Hero Award category. I question that, because I think dogs are very much the heroes of the, you'll see them at the awards, it'll be pandered forever. I think they get...
I was going to say, I'm not sure they're unsung. They get more attention than anybody whenever I'm working with them.
Absolutely. Maybe it should be outstanding contribution.
Most popular thing in the bloody room.
Exactly. But I'm not on the judging panel. I refuse to, because I hate that thing of saying, why didn't you vote for me? So I've took the position of consulting. What is it? Consulting contributor, the most pretentious title I could find, just so that I could have my say but not be blamed when certain people or animals
do you get much of that? I'm sure you don't get too much of that, though.
What, abuse? Constantly.
Well, I'm sure you personally might get some abuse, but you're a hard guy to get on with. I mean, like, in terms of people wishing that, they'd got the awards or who was most deserving or any of that sort of rubbish.
Generally, people do the magnanimous thing. It's an absolute honour to be invited. Good. And then a couple of drinks later going, yeah, but why didn't you vote
It's the
me?
British way.
I say, obviously, I did. I believe in you. But no, it is.
There's lots of stuff out there, because even in the innovation side of it, I was looking there. I looked at one, and maybe I'm like going to call you out here, because there was one in there around the zero emission based pumping appliance for LFB. Haven't loads of brigades done that now, or have they led on it in some way? Because they surely have just got that obviously from a manufacturer, or is it the case that they've invested in it first? And we'll talk about a few different ones, but I wanted to ask you about that one because it's in there against one of my favourites. I'll be honest, Steve Sadler. is coming on the podcast in the next week. And I know just on call and retained, or whatever people want to call it, is a massive. It's the $1 million question across all other services now. And I know he's doing something important, but I saw it in there against the zero emission stuff.
I think it's the work that they've done to pioneer it with the manufacturers alongside the manufacturers. I'd have to scroll through and get the actual nomination out to go into more detail, but they're all worthy. They're all worthy considerations, and it's not just the topic. It's around how is this pioneering? Quite a lot of the time, it's not just brigades replicate what other brigades are doing, but how is this going to make a difference? And I think part of the contribution there from memory was talking about this could be the trailblazer to ensure that we go zero carbon.
Somebody's got to go first, haven't they?
For more
That's
services
the big thing with all of this.
Absolutely.
So London Fire Brigade being the biggest and theoretically, the best funded and all that sort of jazz, someone's got to step forward and go, okay, we're all talking about this. We're actually going to do it. Otherwise, it's not going to get done, because it is expensive. I mean, I remember when we went to one of the services shows last year, I think the difference between a standard appliance like 370,000 pounds or something like that, you can get some for about 320, depending on type of appliances. And then your electric vehicles were like 700 or 800. They're at least 2 or 3 times the cost. And I was like, wow, the government's going to have to support or subsidize or do something with it. So I do look forward to learning a little bit more. We need to do a full episode with some expert on that at some point, because it's something that's racing to the forefront of everybody's mind, especially when we're talking about 2030 or whatever it is. We're not going to be selling diesel and petrol cars and all that sort of stuff anymore. The emergency services and the government in general really do need to practice what we preach. So we're going to have to lead the way, and we've got some huge fleets of vehicles. So it's good to see them going first, I suppose. In the collaboration stuff, I was interested to see some of the Ukraine things in there, because again, that's not necessarily the first time anybody's ever done these things. Because organizations like FireAid, which is the NFCC stuff, and then there's a couple of ones. There's a Scotland one whose name is Sarah, isn't it? And there's a couple of other organizations that have done a lot of great stuff out there this year. Today's episode was brought to you by our good friends at Wood Watches. We put so much thought into the people that we partner with on the podcast, and Wood Watches has been with us since the beginning. Now, they have 6 different collections now. In October, they brought out their new Fearless collection. Now, I've been speaking to some people in the past who have got that Wood watch for a specific occasion, for something really smart, really classy. But the best thing about the Fearless collection is that it's built to be worn in active surroundings. Now, again, if you're unfamiliar with it, the massive core of all these Wood watches is the upcycling of firefighting materials. And the Fearless collection has got a 100-year-old British Brass firefighter helmet melted down and placed inside the crown of the watch. That's exactly the same as they have with all of their collections. But this one also features repurposed black fire hose. I myself went for the Valiant watch. I've had this for a couple of years now. Really nice. I've got it in the red strap. There's a whole range of payment options. Go over and take a look at them. Whether you're thinking of a retirement gift, you got something special to celebrate, or you have just started your emergency services career, go over and check them out. WilliamWoodWatches.com. The best way to support the podcast is to support our sponsors. So please take a click in the notes below. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I mean the collaborations are exceptional. You mentioned FireAid. That's with it's almost like the whole UK fire sector coming together with FireAid, the National Fire Chiefs Council, Fire Industry Association, fire suppliers, fire and rescue services. If there's anybody who hasn't contributed to the Ukraine convoys in the UK fire sector, I've yet to meet them. It's a phenomenal coming together.
That's why I think it's unfair to be against them in that sector, because there's so many people involved in that project. Well, I'd be annoyed if I was up against that one.
Well, they held a parliamentary fundraising function the other week, which I was honoured to be invited to, although it cost me a fortune. It was with the FireAid were hosting that, and they did detail how that came together, and it was this, sort of key figures that managed to draw that together through NFCC. The 3 sort of main protagonists were FireAid, NFCC, and Fire Industry Association. So, and the key figures there that managed to do that, Claire Hoyland from FireAid, Sarah Adamson from FIA.
That's great.
Yeah. In
fact, I know Sarah as well, Sarah Adamson. She's done a lot of work with...
It's Angloco.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sarah's really cool, actually. I love Sarah.
Getting that together is immense. But there was another one, a little known one. The training college in Malta was asked to do some training by a US NGO of Syrian firefighters who were facing wildfires and didn't have the requisite training. And this was during sort of the aftermath of COVID and lockdown and such like. So they managed to get together and do online training for advanced firefighting. And that involved translators from 4 different countries, an immense international operation to deliver what we're doing now, which is basically having a chat online with some obviously high-class training involved. And it's things like that where you go, it's little known, little understood, but there's some immense work going on and complicated work that doesn't always get the headlines and the recognition it deserves. So there's things like that going on, as well as the I wouldn't say run of the mill, but it's almost standard now, the amount of fire safety community activity that goes on that's above and beyond, the interaction with communities. Hertfordshire doing the family support scheme, have been helping out there. There's all sorts, and it never stops. And the fire services charitable commitments, I know through the Firefighters charity, is immense. And
they've just opened up that new centre, haven't they? Because you've just done a feature on it this week. They've opened up a new family centre in Devon, is it?
Yes, it's the centre it's the sort of Freeze Cottage, I think it's called, within a Harkham
That's
house.
Amazing. I love that they're still doing stuff like that. It's great.
Family orientated, yeah. We were sort of going in that direction when we reopened Harkham in 2019, I think it was. So then Duke of Cambridge opened that. And that was the sort of start of, in many ways, the full-on commitment towards the family of firefighters rather than just the individuals. Really a lot of that came out of Grenfell, and the wider impact. So they're our partner of choice, as they have been from the start, because I'm slightly biased, but that doesn't mean to say that all the other charities are doing immense work around the world, FireAid being a trailblazer in that regard, we'd also get our support.
Hey folks, just wanted to jump in with a quick piece around firefighter health and wellbeing. Whether you are trying to join the fire service and pass them tricky fitness tests, if you are currently serving, or if you are coming up to that next chapter of your life, retiring from the emergency services, we get so many different questions around it. So in partnership with Fitness for the Frontline, we have come up with a series of guidance and programs specifically designed to reflect the physical elements of the role of a firefighter. So whether it's carrying an LPP across an overgrown field, lifting a ladder above your head under running it, or wrestling with cutting gear for 30 plus minutes at some kind of complicated RTC, our bodies are required to lift, push, and carry objects in very specific circumstances. That is effectively what Fitness on the Frontline focuses on, as well as the longer term aspects of overall health and wellness for our firefighters. Now, we are definitely not about to be smashing out world records or getting that beach body ready in 6 weeks rubbish. The systems and programs that we put in place are adjusted for people's current fitness levels, and they're not a prescriptive way or a one-size-fits-all BS. It is very likely for myself personally that I'm still going to be a firefighter when I'm 60 plus, so longevity in the role is really important to me, and I know it is for so many people out there. It all starts with no obligation, 7 days worth of the programming, absolutely free. So whether you're joining, serving, or looking at the next chapter in your life, Fitness for the Frontline is designed by firefighters for firefighters. Now back to the show. I wanted to ask you about some of the big things you've been covering in the sector, even just over the past few weeks, because you've said about how many awards are coming through and how it's literally a non-stop onslaught of people going above and beyond. But we have also seen some immense challenges over the past few weeks, both around the Independent Culture Review. We just released an episode about it yesterday or a couple of days ago for London Fire Brigade. There's some good pieces in there around supporting people in their development as well, and how that whole sort of leadership development and picking the right people, which kind of leads me on to the whole practice to progress thing. So firstly, I wanted to kind of get your input on how you saw maybe the culture review has come out, the thoughts about it. I know Fire Magazine, people can go over and have a look. You guys have done a piece on it already, and obviously spoke to the commissioner, but it was a tough read, to be honest.
Yeah, I was rereading it just before we came on. It's interesting because Nazir Afzal, the author, was speaking at the Asian Fire Services Association conference last week, last Thursday, and the report was leaked on the Saturday, and he was expecting it to come out on the Monday, as was everybody else, and didn't reference it. Really was very strict on himself in being very, very
professional,
discreet, and didn't reference that. But he told his story, his background. It's absolutely fascinating, and the listening aspect was actually the kind of crescendo of that, because as Northwest Crown Prosecutor, Chief Prosecutor, he went after the Rochdale grooming gangs, and was the one that prosecuted those. Was the one that from that vast amount of evidence from young girls that had been through the childcare system and were unsupported and unlistened to and abused. And that precipitated an onslaught from him personally. I'm sort of paraphrasing his personal story here. I feel
no, 100%. Well, I'm going to badger him now. He sounds like a fascinating individual. I'm going to try and get him as a guest.
Yeah, oh, he is, and very, very funny, very obviously very perceptive. But that precipitated the onslaught of to prosecute outstanding sexual abuse cases, the likes of Rolf Harris and Stuart Hall. But the kind of the real key to come from that was one lady who it didn't manage to secure the prosecution for, but there were several others that the individual was sent down for, and he was apologetic to her, but she came back and said, "You listened, you understood, you know that gave me closure." And I think that's an incredible thing. And I think that approach is what he's done within London Fire Brigade, which is to listen, to give voice to people who were previously marginalised and suffered extreme abuse, which is obviously shocking and completely unacceptable, and is as the Commissioner has said, they're working on dealing with that. And the first step was to do an open, independent review and open themselves up to that. But that's what's needed to shine a light on the shocking revelations that have come out, which I hope and would like to believe doesn't exist more broadly within the UK Fire and Rescue Services. But I'm sure there are pockets of that because of antiquated cultural systems that the HMI have pointed to. There's still a lot of work to be done, but there are also, and this is what the awards come back to. And if you look at the outstanding contributions and the team support and various other awards categories that are recognizing the incredible work that EDI leads and departments are doing to really transform communities, both internally and externally, and that's quite remarkable. So it's worth flagging these things up, but it's also worth saying that there are things being done, which is a long-winded way of coming back to Practice to Progress, which we developed in conjunction with the police Practice to Progress back a few years ago. And we adapted to the Fire and Rescue Service. And by adapting, we didn't do a commercial model. We worked with the Asian Fire Service Association in partnership and Women in the Fire Service to provide a bank 70 assessors that come from a huge, diverse range of backgrounds to provide support and mentoring and coaching and assessing to help everybody within the service be able to progress. And the one thing that Nazir did let slip, he said that about the report, he said that there was one BME individual that didn't get promoted, and he was the only one among his cadre of candidates that went into it that didn't have coaching and mentoring support. Absolutely none, and all of his white colleagues did. Now, Practice to Progress says if you want to target BME individuals, you can do this. If you want to target everybody, give everybody the same opportunity to progress, then surely an independent resource such as this, which is not for profit, it's a cost recovery model, and it will provide people who have been through that experience. Because one of the issues is BME individuals are not allowed to fail. Nazir kept saying this. It's one strike and you're out. That's been the cultural conditioning almost across society. Whereas Samantha Samuels, a group commander at West Midlands, spoke at a Black History Month conference the other month and said, I put it on Instagram when I got promoted and everyone, yay, but 8 times I'd failed, 8 times. And people don't get to hear about that. Failing is okay. Failing is part of the process. And we should make sure that the support is in place so people are allowed to learn from that. And assessors that have been through that have got that background from AFSA, from the likes of Women in the Fire Service, Alex Johnson, the former Chief of South Yorkshire, Becky Bryan, who's done so much on leadership within the National Fire Chiefs Council. These are our assessors, and these are the people, not little old white middle-aged me talking about it. It's going to be people with the same background to help people that have failed. Alex talks about failing. She used to have no confidence, and yet she's risen through. She's got to the top. She's retired, and she's still giving back. So that to me is a practical, absolutely essential support mechanism that we've come in to introduce because of our ethos of sharing knowledge. That's the Fire Magazine background, that's the company background, but it seemed a perfect fit to get something that was working within the police. 78% success rate of black male officers succeeded in getting promotion. So we got something that tangibly works, and it's works for everybody. It's for on-call, it's for whole time, it's for retained, it's for everybody of all backgrounds. And that to me is about, as my colleague Dave Etheridge puts it, it's about widening the gate, not lowering the bar. And give me a tool.
That is a great statement.
It's brilliant. And Dave, if you get to speak to Dave, he'll come out with a lot more articulate about this than I can. But it supports everything that the National Fire Chiefs Council are doing. So the leadership framework, there's a workbook that each person does along with the assessor, and it fits in, it aligns to the code of ethics, it aligns to fire standards, it increases knowledge of what's going on and supports all of that. So it's not working as some sort of independent concept, it's working to support what is already in place, the values and ethics of each organization, and it's done so completely confidentially, and to do so in a supportive environment. So I think it's magic. If I had that during my career or the equivalent thereof, then I would have been absolutely delighted with it.
I think it's something we 100% need now, probably more so than ever. Now we're seeing so much, as I say ad nauseum on the podcast, we're seeing so much retirement. We're seeing so many people move quick and fast and slick through the ranks. Are they getting the full breadth of personal development as they move through? Probably not at the moment, not through their own fault as such. It's a bit like, we need to fill these positions, and these individuals are the best of what we have available, but it's almost like we're missing that lateral development at times. So I think this, when you speak, passionately about that mentoring and that coaching aspect of it, those are the bits that probably help people gain a little bit more understanding of themselves, a little bit more self-awareness, which 100% is, it's been proven that it will give people that greater leadership ability as they're moving into these positions. Because otherwise, it's easier to promote people, and it's harder to sort of roll that back if you feel like you've made a mistake. So it's good to see something like this coming in now, I suppose, at least.
It's absolutely essential. At that same Black History Month event, Wayne Brown, the Deputy Chief of West Midlands, remarked that when he goes to events, he's the only person of colour in the room quite frequently at a senior level. And why is it, he questioned, why is it that the senior management of all fire and rescue services, that they tend to recruit from within? Why is that? And why is it that they're mainly white men that are recruited into those roles when there are half a dozen at least BME people within each organisation, with each fire and rescue service, with the potential to progress? And another speaker at that event, Lou Taylor, who's the Southern lead for Black History Month, said he talked about institutional exclusion, and with the foreword invisible institutional exclusion. And with a workforce that is 95% white and male, then you can see it in the UK Fire Service. In order to change that, you have to go out and do positive action, and you have to intervene to make a difference. Otherwise, it's just me and you staring at each other, Pete, looking like, each other. It's like looking in the mirror. I mean, people can imagine this, good-looking blokes, but...
Do you think we're now seeing the fruits of that labour, though? Because I look at this in the same way that when I've had conversations with women in the fire service, it may have felt like and I'm kind of going to repeat a point here, but it may have felt like over the last 15 years we saw little to no progress. But I think the hidden factor there was that we simply didn't have as many people leaving. The turnover of staff wasn't as high. Now we are coming to that natural point of retirement. I think we're going to start seeing that now anyway. So I almost don't want to continue to over-index on these aspects, because I don't think we're doing it wrong. I think what we have been doing for the last 5 years at least, probably not before that, but we are on the right track. So just because we're not quite seeing it now, as we continue to do recruitment, as we continue to see people climb the ranks, I think we should continue on the same path. But I feel like we're actually in a good place. We might not see that reflected in the figures at the higher echelons of organizations, but that will come with time. Do you know what I mean? The only way you're going to fix that right now is if you go and sack people simply to replace them with people of different origins, unlike the standard white male. So I do think we are going to see that, but it's not a simple like that. The return on that investment is a long path. And I think we're now at a point where we're going to start seeing that really quickly over the next 3 or 4 years. I'd
like to think so, but I would say that you've got to do something. You've got to make a practical difference. I said that at a conference a few years ago with AFSA that we put on called Changing the Face of the UK Fire and Rescue Service. Didn't really work. And I said, white men of influence and in positions of influence, such as myself, have got to say something meaningful and do something impactful, which sounded like a jolly soundbite. But actually, the impactful, so doing something impactful, is very difficult. What we try to do in the magazine is make it visible that people of colour could progress, and let's see these people in various roles within the fire and rescue service, and we ran several things doing that. But ultimately, you look back 20 years ago, and there were 6 principal officers from BME background. Now there are 2 in the UK fire and rescue service.
Didn't know that.
So when Nazir Aslaf at the conference last week said how many chief officers are people of colour, none. How many chief constables have there been? There was one about 10 years ago. How many chief executives of the top 50 NHS trusts are BME? I think there's one, when 25% of the workforce is. So something practical has to be done. Leaders need to intervene to make sure that something's done. I'm going to talk about positive action. I don't mean to discriminate against anybody from any background. It's just make sure that those people without the confidence, that haven't had the confidence, haven't had the even breaks, haven't had the level playing field, are empowered to move on. I think that's the empowerment bit, is that we're automatically empowered. I'm automatically empowered. You are. We've schmoozed our way through life. It's easy, but we just need to work together and do something. So I can talk a great fight. And do so in the magazine, but it's about implementing things such as practice to progress and being practically of use and intervening. I think that's really important, because how else are you going to wield your influence as you know? And I'm speaking to people of influence out there. What are you actually going to do? Are you going to talk? Are you going to quote the code of ethics? Are you going to quote the fire standards? Are you going to, reference doctrine and such like? Or what do you actually do? How do you intervene? How do you make a difference?
I wanted to move us on to something that has probably gone quiet in the last few weeks or maybe the last month, but certainly when we saw the declaration from the World Health Organization with regard to firefighting being a cancerous profession and the decontamination efforts that have been ongoing for a very, very long time. And you ran an article earlier in October around, we're 1 year on now from Decon and some of the stuff that the Fire Brigade Union have been working on. And they put this as the beginning of the Decon generation. Do you think that's the case? Do you think we are where we need to be, or do you just think simply we've raised awareness? Do you think we've got the tools out there at the minute to really make a difference and protect firefighters, given how we've so heavily invested in some elements of PPE that have now been proven not to do what they say on the tin, unfortunately?
I fully applaud. I was at the FBU conference. Is it earlier this year? Crikey, time does fly. And their decon session was the best session I've ever been to, and I've been going to conferences for based on 25 years or however many years, for the absolutely loaded emotion there of people talking about their sufferance, losing colleagues, losing loved ones, losing family members. And I think we're all in that environment of knowing and friends that have passed away that were very possibly long before their time and were due to contamination. The raising awareness is the first step, and I think I fully support the FBU's initiative in doing that, and we've done so in the magazine and featured their research findings and encouraged further research. The working with suppliers and technology and industry to ensure that safe handling of materials, that safe washing of PPE, all of these things are absolutely central to what our awards are about. You know, we set up as an industry and fire and rescue service convergence. It's not a separation. And quite often industry is on the outside looking in saying, we've got this great idea about zero emissions vehicle and how we can change your infrastructure and how we can help you do that because we've done that over here, or we've done that in the military, or we've done that wherever. The fire and rescue service tends to be very focused inward quite often when it comes to technology and innovation, and I think people
we are pretty siloed like that. I think we forget how much correlating information, research, innovation there is outside of our sector. I don't know why that is, and I've had that feedback from like manufacturers and providers as well, and they often say, you know, the fire service is a very, very funny place. And I think it came from, and I won't mention who, but it came from one manufacturer where they said around, you know, when we present all of this data and stuff, it's like you have to go through the process every single time with each chief of each service, because by comparison to working with large police forces or large military forces or NHS, certainly as an absolute behemoth of an organization, each fire and rescue services and or brigade acts like its own little empire, and that can make people very proud, which is great, and we want to see that, but it can also subconsciously force that siloed working where we don't speak to each other very much. And it's astonishing when I hear some things that are going on in other services, and I'm like, how do we not all know about that?
I think you've articulated the problem perfectly, and that's why FireESA, now called FRES, Fire Rescue, I can't remember the acronym now, so it's so recent, through the Fire Industry Association, has challenged on these issues and keeps trying to raise the bar in terms of collaboration. But things I don't think have fundamentally changed. I think there's still a very narrow aspect to innovation, collaboration, and embracing new technology. It needs to be thrown wide open. And that interaction between industry and fire and rescue services needs to be on a level playing field. I think it needs to be that, you know, you're the innovators. Industry are the innovators. They work in different sectors. They work globally.
Yeah.
They've done immense, amazing things, and yet the fire service can be very insular, very prescriptive, and still working in silos when it comes to recognizing the problem. They talk about problems rather than solutions, I think, too often.
Yes.
Whereas we should be solution driven, and we should be talking about improving services, to embracing technology in such a way that firefighting technology is moving forward leaps and bounds. But what we tend to do is look at what Scandinavia are doing, or look elsewhere and adapt technology that can often be 20 years old because it's taken that long to go through the scrutiny and appraisal and the research and all the rest of it. It's not particularly innovative. That, once again, I challenge that myself by saying that, yeah, there are pockets where it does work, and you raised a couple earlier in the innovation category. There is all sorts of innovative initiatives underway that challenge that thinking, and that's the way it should be. But I think we need to, as a whole sector, come together and acknowledge the bigger picture, which is we should be doing better at this. And I think It's a bit like culture change, culture review. The HMI State of Fire report was saying a few years ago, the fire and rescue service needs to up its game. So what have we done collectively? Well, there's the leadership framework from NFCC, there's bits and bats, but there's a kind of collectivism that would be more helpful, and this is what the awards represent to me, is that coming together. So we're not working in silo. And for an industry awards, look at the amount of individual EDI related categories where we're talking about LGBTQ plus, we're talking about most influential women in fire. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have separate categories because there'd be a level playing field, but there isn't. So we do. We put these people, we mark them out because it's necessary to identify best practice. But identifying best practice starts, with the innovation, collaboration, emergency services collaboration, training provider, projects, teams. All these different categories are really about highlighting what's working out there. And a friend of mine said, "Oh yeah, I'm in the housing category, and we have our industry awards, and there's industry awards all over the place, and each department gets their little tick of, a badge of honor, and they've been nominated this year." And they said, "Is that what yours is like?" And I said, "You should come along, because it really isn't. It's not that at all." This is from the feedback I've got from winners in the past and nominees, is that this has really made a difference. This marks us out. This is something that we're getting acknowledged for, including a winner that had said to me that she was so inspired by the win that she's now going to move on and progress. This was a few years ago, and carry on her career because she's stagnated. But the award served to inspire, to say that this is what I should be doing more of. The very things that the nominee listing, the very things that I've won this award for, I will grow and move on with those. So that's what it means. That's what I think it means to come to.
I think by comparison, a lot of services are very small in the grand scheme of things, and I don't say that as an offensive way, but what I'm trying to say there is these individuals, when they get scattered back to the wind and they return back to their home services, they may very well, realistically, be working in a department, maybe by themselves, or just them and two other people, and everyone's work is essential and everyone's work is important, but they perhaps can feel quite lonely and don't have that connection with these other services, despite the fact that the work that they're doing truly is incredible. And it's not inherently that their service doesn't care about what they're doing, but everybody is so busy just to trying to keep the hamster wheel turning. So it's only when we get an opportunity for things like the awards, and it is really good of a lot of chief fire officers and so on and so forth who put these nominations in, to give that opportunity for those individuals to be truly acknowledged. Otherwise, you only have to be, I always say, what gets recognized and rewarded gets repeated. So you only have to be ignored for so long before you go, you know what's the point? Or, like that woman said, about that aspect of stagnating and not seeing the value in what they're doing. But when you can pull your head up out of the sandpit, even just for one day, and connect with other people that say, "Oh, yeah, I've been following the work that you've been doing, or I've been seeing it on your Service Matters, or I saw it in the magazine, and I've seen the project path, and I've seen the arc that's taken, and I've seen the results that you've got from it. What can we learn about it? Can we put together a call? Can you help us perhaps implement something similar?" And that is a massive injection of recognition and motivation, ultimately, for people, as corny as that might sound. That's how I certainly see it. I get quite romantic about stuff like that because I'm big on acknowledgement. I really enjoy, it's kind of the whole point of the podcast, really. It's speaking to those people and acknowledging people that probably will do 30 years, retire, and the things will get forgotten otherwise. It's almost like a timestamp to recognize them. And I see the awards in the very same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what we do, basically what I do for a living through the magazine. It's about recognition. It's about highlighting, whether that's best practice, sharing knowledge, sharing understanding, sharing insight, sharing the way to do things, getting frustrated when things don't work, campaigning. That's what it's all about. And not everybody gets the opportunity to do that, as you say, in their day job, because it's so difficult, and it's also hard to get acknowledged. There might be internal some recognition, but it's difficult often, and the extra work that people put in is quite phenomenal. Going out into the community and doing put in hours and hours is just quite incredible, and the amount of work that goes on. I mean, there's initiatives all over the place, and the magazine features them all the time, which I think it's a great honour to be able to pay tribute to that.
I did want to ask you, if I could, I know you're only an impartial observer, but it is something that is probably going to, not flood, but it's going to play a poignant part in the magazine over the coming months. For better or worse, I mean, for me, I was about to say unfortunately, but actually I don't mean unfortunately, but also kind of do. I'll get to the point. You featured an article a week or so ago around the ballot dates announced. So UK Fire and Rescue Service, we did an episode around pay and the undulating increases that it's had and the pay gap that went on for a number of years. And now we're at that horrible point again, where we are quite potentially looking at industrial action. The firefighter strike ballot goes out. When does it go out? It goes out on the 5th of December, so in a few days' time. Yeah, but it's open for a whole month, so hopefully, I'm pretty confident there'll obviously be no strike action during Christmas and New Year's, because I think that was what was so hard for me. And the point I also want to ask you is around, like, a lot of people now, because they've seen so much recruitment in the past 5 years, won't remember what it was like last time, because it's been a long time. What's it been, 10 years?
Yeah, 2014 probably. Or something 2014, like that.
8 years, 9 years since we had any industrial action before. It was bloody horrible, from my personal opinion. And I would hate to see those types of things destroy all the good work that's getting done. People throwing down their tools, throwing up their arms, going, I'm not playing anymore, I'm taking my ball home, and I'm not being part of this. And seeing the sector grind to a halt is what I don't want to see. So for people that perhaps don't remember, what's your reflections on the last time things like this happened, and is there any kind of fears about it? I'm not inherently asking for your opinion, because I know you're external to the whole thing, but how do you see it? Because it is something you're probably going to do some coverage on. I know you support the communication of it all.
Yeah, the difficult. I mean, obviously, I've got the same foreboding that you have, and it's. I don't want to get drawn
it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. And I'm an independent observer. I'm not sort of involved intrinsically with Fire and Rescue Service day to day. But to me, I mean, last time was the biggest memory was it was flashbacks to the time before, which is now 20 years ago. And we were more involved back then. It was slightly different, and I was involved in a lot of media, the media coverage and commentating on situations and trying to be impartial but also supportive and what have you. And that didn't do a job of good, obviously, because I think I was naive and thought that, well, this will help. How does discussing it with the then CFO president Jeff Ord on TV help anything other than we're saying, we're largely in agreement. We should get something. They should get something. Blah blah blah. So made the obvious decision last time to step back and be supportive wherever possible. What it does to Fire and Rescue Service is it's that other, it's another change bomb that's thrown into the mix. You've got the pandemic, you've got cost of living crisis, you've got all sorts of constant stream of large impediments, and this is possibly the largest that's coming up. How do Fire and Rescue Services navigate the way through them? I suggest that the ones that are in a good position now will cope, and that goes back to HMI and how they're doing with their cultural programs, how they are, that they will be able to manage that, hopefully much, to minimize the impact. But when you're talking about public service safety and public safety and firefighter safety, these are all alarm bells that are deeply disturbing for the service.
That's what worries
for everybody
me.
involved.
And I'm not going to ask you to give comment on this bit, but I'll just say for my own opinion, but that's what worries me about places like LFB, because I've got a number of men and women that work there that I love. I mean, head of heels love. They specifically moved to LFB because they wanted to be tip of the sword. They wanted to be the biggest, the whatever, the most well-funded, and they really wanted to go there and make a difference. And I feel like, we've now gone to ballot action, so like kind of one of the wheels has fell off and the culture's a bit rickety. Then they've had the gut punch of this review, and it's like, God, I worry greatly for it. And I'm not going to ask you to pass comment, so we can simply move past it if you want to. But I really do worry about it.
I will pass one comment because rereading the report today is what they did was highlight where it does work. Where the system and the fellowship, there's this mutual support is absolutely immense, and there are pockets. The disappointment is that it's random.
Yeah. Well, that's the economy of scale thing. I think like it's like it's like 10 services. People almost say that it's unmanageable. It's so big that it's unmanageable. It's like when you say, "Oh, I know someone that works in LFB. You work in LFB. You must know them." No, they've got no idea. They don't know each other. There's so many people there. Is it truly manageable? Because I love what you say there, and you're absolutely right. That's why we did an episode on it. Because if people actually get past the comments in the media and go into it, there are a number of wonderful examples of watches of women, black, white, all different sorts of diversities that have had great support, recruits that have had wonderful development journeys, but they're not the ones that necessarily make the headlines is the only challenge. And that's what really has been an emotional trigger for people, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that those comments have been increasingly vocal about the size and scale and politicisation of the brigade that doesn't seem to bear any semblance with other fire and rescue services in the UK. And there are pluses and minuses to that. We're hearing obviously mostly the minuses. I would like to think that because of that, there would be it would be highly unlikely that the sort of scale of cultural issues within London were reflected elsewhere. But who's to say? There needs to be more independent reviews.
Well, I think the fact that places are smaller. So if we said there's 100 in 6,000 or whatever it is, and then we said, well, my brigade's got 600, so there's only one person. My naivety, I find it very easy when I have had people on my crew or on my watch under my command behaving in a manner which I don't believe is fair. It's been easier for me, only personally. And again, that might be an elitist thing. I'm a confident, assertive white male, blah, 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 whatever. So maybe it's easier for me, but it's easier to stamp it out when the problem is... Well, I was going to say the problem is smaller, but it's not necessarily smaller if you work on percentages, but when you have those percentages, you could very easily have an entire watch, 6, 12 people, all of that ilk, all of that poor moral code, and that can become very toxic, which is dangerous. Whereas, if you've got one bad egg on a watch, you can address it and you can almost overwhelm it, re-educate, or if required, dismiss and deal with easier. I suppose it's harsh for me to say that because I've never worked for London Fire Brigade, but I don't know. Am I fishing there, do you think?
I think what you've said initially is that it's huge, and it sets up its own complications, but that's not a get-out clause. Everybody that I've spoken to about it, both within the fire and rescue service, people like yourself, within industry, equally, from all different backgrounds, are equally shocked, saying, how does this happen in this day and age? How does that not get reported? How does that not get acted upon? I think that was the shock of probably the report writers themselves, is that this is just unbelievable.
It almost feels so extreme to the point where people think that's got to be a lie. But then again, maybe it echoes back to the practice to progress thing, because I think some of the leadership development, and I'm not going to alienate it to LFB, but it's been like, and it says it in the report, there are so many managers that just hate and avoid uncomfortable conversations. And that is, you're accepting, you're tolerating something. They say whatever you permit, you promote, isn't it? And if you can stand by while those things take place, you're not, you're not a manager for the 364 days a year where you don't have to have an uncomfortable conversation. It's usually that one uncomfortable conversation where you demonstrate your moral compass that truly demonstrates your leadership ability, I think.
Yeah, and leadership is just, the work that NFCC are doing on the leadership framework is that you've got these moral principles, but actually you put your finger on it, invoking it, doing the job there are grey areas, and it requires fortitude, and it requires other elements of substance that also need to be kind of delved into. What are the skills? It's
like an art form, I always say, because it's very personal. Me, as a 6'5", 18 stone male, I will have to have different soft skills and a different way that I build rapport with people, the different way I deal with people than will a 5 foot whatever woman of African origin or whatever it might be, she will have a different skill set. Because if I am overly assertive, then I might come across as bullying or intimidating. So that's why I feel like it's not like standard, operating procedures or national operational guidance or anything like that. You can't just, we all approach a fire in the same way. Okay, but we don't all lead teams in the same way. I always say to people, treat everybody equally, but don't treat them the same, because they're not all the same, and I'm not the same as a leader. So that's where, as you said about this coaching and mentoring aspect, I think that's why those types of things that you speak about in Practice to Progress are so very important, because coaching and mentoring is all about that individual's personal development areas and how they, as a leader, build rapport and get their values across, because it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
I wanted to just go back and close the loop on the ballot action and on the pay stuff, only because when we speak about the awards and we speak about all the exemplary, incredible people that are doing some amazing things in the sector, my only fear is, and maybe it echoes as well about when we're speaking about people of these BAME backgrounds, women in the fire service, stuff like that, almost we might accidentally create a beast that we don't understand. And what I mean by that is, we encourage people to develop, we encourage them to progress, we encourage them to make a difference. If we end up with a sector that is so poorly paid and so poorly appreciated that is not desirable to talent anymore, then those individuals would leave, not because they inherently are not given opportunities or that they hate the sector, perhaps, and I'm open to being corrected. This is just one tangent that I'm going off on. Like, if you were developed to have high standards, to expect the best, to know that you can make a difference, to be rewarded fairly economically for the work that you do, but then you're part of a sector that is so poorly paid, you have to have a second income. And that worries me, because we'll lose all these talented people that you're going to acknowledge, and that the teams and everything in the sector is going to acknowledge in the next few weeks. I worry that will stop.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about pay and conditions, it's a whole coterie of issues that each organisation needs to set themselves up, wants to set themselves up as the employer of choice. That's the crucial aspect. Now, obviously, pay is absolutely a huge element to that, but it's part of that. Can I progress within this organisation? Can I make a difference? Can I help inspire others to make a difference? Wayne Babcock, the chief of Royal Berkshire, was saying the other day that when he was interviewed for the job, he had a lot of staff group meetings. And he asked them the question, because it was essential for him if he was going to move there. He asked the staff, and I think it was various groups from various parts of the organisation, would you recommend that a loved one comes and works in this organisation? Would you recommend that? And he became chief, so I'd like to think that people did respond in the positive. It's a great question to ask if you're going for promotion or you're going going to a different organisation. Would you have other people, family members, working in the fire and rescue service in this organisation? I've thought that with my stepdaughters and granddaughters. Would I let them, would I recommend fire and rescue service as a career? And I go, absolutely. If they came back with a certain organisation at a certain time, would I qualify that? I probably would. I'd probably do a little bit of investigation. But I could reel off a whole host of fire and rescue services that I'd be delighted that they would go and join. I think it's looking on the positive side. As employers of choice, as great opportunities for promotion, great opportunities to develop, great opportunities to get on there. Whether as a firefighter, and if you're looking to progress, then read Fire Magazine, because that'll help. Or just widen the skills base and all the rest of it. But if you want to shoot for the stars, why not? And there are networking groups, and I keep mentioning those networking groups. That's what Nazir kept talking about as well in conference, is get the network, get the support, because that offers mentoring, which is really useful from like-minded people who have been through experiences that can help. And within organizations, there are support networking groups to do that. We've got this automatically. But there are exceptions with people with all sorts of neurodiverse backgrounds that need extra support. And it's about an organization being able to identify and support that and help their journey through. And in doing all of these things, and there's a rich other coterie of activities and interventions that can be made, that the organization itself becomes much more attractive to work for. Yeah. And you want to work for a place where you want to meet these people, you want to work with these people, you want to go into the community sharing, knowing that those aspects of the community are also representative within your organization, and you feel wholly supported and able to be, as it's talked about, authentic and be your real self within that organization. The fire and rescue service reflects the whole of, and should reflect the whole of society. So you're going to get elements within, but recruiting in terms of morals and in terms of principles, rather than just the tick box qualifications, can you drive, and then getting people into the organization because they can drive. Well, you can train somebody to drive, but you can't necessarily train out some of the more extreme and unacceptable behaviors that people are bringing in. So maybe the recruiting process should be scrutinized much greater to ensure that you're recruiting the right people in the first place. That would help. Get the right people in there. Those that are not coming along, and make sure that they're giving every support to ensure that their behaviours are in line with the organisation. But recruiting in the first instance, getting the right people in there, really would help. And diversity is not just a nice to have. It's about getting all those skill sets in there, getting the different ways of thinking that helps the organisation be a fun, enriching place to be. That's what we all want from our workplaces. I'm sat in a cubbyhole.
I don't believe that. I think you take a lot of your enjoyment from the fact that you do get to engage with a lot of people at these types of events, and that's what gives you the insights.
And a lot of inspiring people. That's my wider workplace to a greater extent. But then again, and because of the issues we're talking about, you do come across a lot of the issues that arise in there, but they come down to fairly basic principles. Talk about code of ethics and how people morally navigate themselves. That's the kind of, these are nice words, but your behaviors display it. It's a bit like what I was talking about before, is say something meaningful, do something impactful. It's your doing. So we can all talk a good fight and go into an interview and say, yes, I believe in this, and I believe in the moral code of this organization, blah, 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 blah. It's your behavior, and how do you as a leader, how do you assert your moral compass? How would you deal with that difficult situation as a 6'5" 18-stone firefighter? How do you have the difficult conversation? Have you had those difficult conversations? Have you had to call out bullying and harassment and inappropriate behaviors? What do you think about disciplinary action? Should we discipline this? Should you take the zero tolerance approach that London Fire Brigade are now taking? Or should have that been the case anyway? Anybody says something inappropriate in a professional environment or a social environment, how do you respond? How do you act to that? How do you do that if somebody else is there and they're a partner of that person? How do you do that without absolutely humiliating that other person? So these are not always black and white issues. It's about proper leadership, and it starts from the top, but it filters down through the organization, so that you walk in the door and the first question you ask isn't, how much do you pay? Because I only want to do a couple of years and find somewhere else. It's what's this place like to work for? What are the people like? What are the opportunities? What are the opportunities for me and people like me, and for other people that could come in and progress? And if you're beginning to have a positive response there, and people are saying, yeah, it's a great place to work, then that sort of trumps all. And in spite of what's coming up, and in spite of the difficulties, you can still have that. You can still have that support and appreciation to guide you through your career. That's not just an aspiration. There are organisations out there within the fire sector, the suppliers that are providing organisations and ethical approaches that are doing that. There's evidence out there. Look at the HMI reports, look at the good people pillars, look at the outstanding ones, go and speak to them. Lancashire was inundated at first. How do you do that? How do you communicate with your people to ensure that the culture is where you want it to be, or progressing in the way that you want it to be? So sorry, I got on a bit of a rant there, but
no, mate, I absolutely love it, and it's kind of what echoes.
It's more than just the money. It's more than just the money.
It echoes back to the awards, because the awards is, what have you done? You know what I mean? It's not your core code of ethics. It's not what you espouse as to be the way we should do something. It's what you've actually done. And it's that opportunity to acknowledge people and the way that they've walked the walk, not just talk the talk. So that's what I love so much about it. For people that are unfamiliar with it, you've been running it for years now, but it'll be on the 9th. Crikey, so we're only 8 days away. So 9th of December down in London. I'd be remiss if we didn't give a thanks to some of the big people that are helping it happen. You've obviously got Gore-Tex, MSA, Safety Components, and who's the other one?
We've got ACO. Yeah, ACO's the partner sponsors, MSA, Gore-Tex, ACO's Safety Components, and a whole coterie of other suppliers.
A whole host of award sponsors on the day. Yeah. So I sincerely look forward to coming down there. Hopefully I'll be able to grab a conversation with a few people, maybe catch you on the day. What does a guy have to do to host it next year?
To host it? Are you? All right.
Maybe we'll continue that conversation offline.
Yeah, let's see.
Beautiful. Andrew,
you did a pretty good audition there, Pete.
We can only try, mate.
Just buy me a coffee and we can speak later.
Roger that, brother.
Or something stronger.
Andy, thank you so much for your time, my friend. I will see you in around 8 days' time in your Sunday best. And good luck to all of the nominees.
Looking forward to it.
Take care.
Cheers.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.